Hi there, folks. I'm going to be responding to PSA Sitch and his recent video about Trump's tweets. So, here we go.
You've probably heard by now that Trump's latest tweets have been quite controversial. So interesting to see progressive Democrat congresswomen who originally came from countries whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe, the worst, most corrupt, and inept anywhere in the world, if they even have a functioning government at all, now loudly and viciously telling the people of the United States, the greatest and most powerful nation on earth, how our government is to be run. Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came? Then come back and show us how it is done. These places need your help badly. You can't leave fast enough. I'm sure that Nancy Pelosi would be very happy to quickly work out free travel arrangements. The congresswomen he is referring to are AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and Ayanna Pressley. Now, of course, many on the left have labeled this tweet as racist, for many reasons. One being that, except for Ilhan Omar, these congresswomen were all born in the United States. And
Yeah, they were born in the United States, but the fact that there was even one foreigner among them does, I think, validate the defense, and also the fact that these people stridently proclaim their affiliation with identity politics. This means that they identify with their countries of origin, or at least with people who are from their countries of origin. Maybe it's broader than their countries of origin, but they have a certain identity that stretches beyond this country. And Trump is pointing out that these places are not doing so well, and if you full-throatedly identify with these places and these people, then it sort of behooves you to help them out, and then come and show us how it's done. If you really have this incredible insight about how to improve, this country, you probably also have even better insights about how to help people back in those places that are full of people who you identify with more strongly.
telling people who are American citizens to go back to their own country is one of America's oldest racist tropes.
I can't understand you. Go back to your country, white power.
Now, of course, many on the right have defended this tweet as not being racist for many reasons. One being that Trump said not to just go back to their country of origin, but to return once they solved their own country's problems. But this video isn't about whether Trump's tweet is racist or not. For the sake of this video, whether Trump is truly racist or not is irrelevant. Because for those defending the tweet, I have not seen anyone say Trump is just too stupid to understand how this tweet would be taken. Nor do I believe that Trump is just too ignorant and naive and accidentally wandered into this situation like Mr. Magoo.
Well, no, but you have to understand the question of whether it's racist is an important question, and it's a different question from whether it can be taken as racist. Whenever you criticize someone along these lines, whenever you say, hey, if you're not happy with this country, you can leave, then it can be taken as racist, but the question is whether it's racially motivated or motivated by something else. And in this case, there's plenty of other motivation to involve yourself or to make these statements, particularly that you have people who identify with other parts of the world coming into the West and into America and saying and telling them how they should run their country. That seems to me to be worth objecting to, regardless of the race of the participants. And so, well, this is not the focus of PSA Sitch's video, but I would say that we can't just slide past whether this tweet is racist or not. I think that it is an important issue, and one that is decided based on whether you think Trump's objections are correct or not. If you think that the Trump's objections make sense, then you don't think it's racist. If you think that they don't make sense and that they require some particular animus or hatred to motivate them, then you believe that it is racist.
No, everyone understands exactly what these tweets are. They are outrage bait. They are a way to trigger the libs. Say something close enough to the edge of racism, but leave yourself just enough room to dance away with a smirk. It's a troll, and that's why many Trump supporters like it. Now, I'm sure that there's some number of racists in that 165,000 likes, but many, if not most, are probably Trump fans celebrating just another Trump troll to trigger the libs.
I think not. I think it's not that people are happy that it's a troll. People are happy that it's a legitimate objection to people who identify with another region coming in and telling the West how to do things. It isn't a racial thing. It would also be the case if you had people from socialist countries coming in who identified with socialism and just came into capitalist countries and said, hey, this is how you should run things. It would make sense in that case to say, hey, go back to your socialist country, which has tons of problems, and show us, after you've solved those problems, how wonderful your ideas are. We're not interested in you coming in and saying how wonderful your ideas are while your countries are in ruin. And then that's a very solid point to make, and it's a very important point to make to any utopians and any people who are pushing some sort of radical ideology. That is a relevant and important point, and a legitimate one. It's not a troll.
Now, from Trump's personal perspective, of wanting to rile up his base, wanting to get reelected, and wanting to pull news coverage away from other topics, this tweet is well done, and accomplishes all those things. But there's one other thing we'll get to that most people aren't really talking about. From your perspective as an individual, these tweets only serve to make everything worse. These tweets only energize the woke, regressive left and give them more power.
Well, as he's going to say later in this video, these tweets do energize the woke, regressive left within the battle between moderate lefts and radical lefts. But the question, leftists and radical leftists, but the question is whether that's a bad thing for the right. My problem with the left is not that it sometimes devolves into shrieking radicals. My problem with the left is with the left's philosophy and with the left's agenda. And I like ineffective leftists more than I like effective leftists, and I like honest leftists more than I like dishonest leftists. So I don't believe that Trump's tweets make things worse for me.
The thing to remember is that the entire SJW narrative relies on two things: victimization and guilt. All the regressive left's power stems from the victim narrative, stems from the story they tell America, that the country is a racist and sexist place. And thus, radical change needs to be implemented in order to fix that. And what better?
But that is not simply the message of the regressive left. That's also the message of the left overall. The regressive left doesn't have the sugar to help the medicine go down. But the moderate left also believes this. Also believes that the country is inherently unjust, that capitalism is unjust, that we need to redress grievances of the world and of disadvantaged and disempowered people in the country. Essentially, you have the same ideology behind both of these faces, but one is screaming in hatred, and one has a dapper suit and a smile. I'm more concerned about the dapper suit and the smile than about the screaming hatred.
Way to completely validate that SJW victim narrative than to have the President of the United States, basically the CEO of the country, come out and publicly say something they will all view as one of the oldest and most obvious racist dog whistles in this country's history, all while his supporters cheer on. Yes, Trump's tweets serve only to strengthen the regressive left's power. And this isn't even a situation where Trump said or did something innocent or by mistake, and the overly sensitive proclaimed it racist. This is not even a fine people situation, where Trump was speaking off the cuff and clarified what he was talking about. No, the wording of this tweet was completely intentional and deliberate. And the timing of this is...
But it's not deliberately racist. I mean, the thing is that I think that PSA Sitch is blinded by his political position, which is a pretty conventional political position among commentators, which is that go back to your own country is inherently racist and bigoted. I don't think it is. I think that Trump later says if you don't like this country, you can leave. And I think that that's not racist. I think it makes sense. You should go where your alliances lie. If your alliances don't lie with a country, and if your passion does not lie with a country, then leave that country. And there's nothing racist about saying that. Just because racists sometimes say it doesn't make it racist. Racists sometimes say lots of things, and in particular, racists often say things that are that you don't need to do any sort of tarot reading or deep investigation and discussion in order to uncover as racist. Racists are usually quite explicit.
This is very important, as this comes right as Nancy Pelosi was pushing back against AOC and the other woke congresswomen, and AOC's staff were calling moderate Democrats racist. Now, for those of us that want to see this brand of woke Twitter ideology expunged from the mainstream, the Pelosi-AOC conflict was fantastic. This is how the left, and the mainstream in general, could throw off the SJW shackles. This is how...
But there'll still be SJWs, just not radical activist SJWs, but there's still going to be the same ideology. There's not going to be a shift in ideology because they've changed tactics. So, if your objection is to the noise, then you have a problem because you're not seeing through to the substance.
How we could be free from this blight. And it was working. Slowly, but it was working. But
no, it wasn't working. There was no reason to think that it was working. There were spats between different parts of the coalition, but there was no rout of the radicals. And there was no reason to expect a rout of the radicals.
Now, after Trump's tweet, where he names Pelosi as an ally, what will happen? The tribalism will kick in. The Democrats will close ranks and once again focus their energies outward on Trump instead of inwards. And AOC and the other woke congresswomen will get a bunch of free airtime and support from the media. Trump's tweet destroys the left's progress of throwing the regressive AOCs out of the party. This reminds me of Jordan Peterson quoting Jung.
To me, there's an old psychoanalytic idea. I think this was derived by Jung. If you can't figure out what someone is doing or why, look at the outcome and infer the motivation.
What is the outcome of Trump?
It's an interesting strategy, one that's going to backfire a lot, but nevertheless worth doing. Like especially if you're taking a lot of data points, inferring things from a single event is a lot weaker than inferring things from many events. And if you have many events where the same outcome or the same sort of outcome seems to arise, then it makes a lot more sense to say to infer the motivation there. So if someone wants mayhem, then their words won't just cause mayhem once; they'll continually cause outrage and mayhem. So in that case, when someone has acted many times in a way that produced the same outcome, you can pretty much infer that they wanted that outcome.
Trump tweeting this, he's strengthening the SJW victim narrative, and he's prematurely ending the Democrats attacking their own woke side and causing them to instead protect them and attack Trump once again. Why? Why would Trump help the regressive left? Give aid to his ideological enemies? Is Trump just stupid? Or does he know exactly what he's doing?
Can't figure out what someone is doing or why, look at the outcome and infer the motivation. If it produces mayhem, perhaps it was aiming at mayhem.
The truth is that Trump doesn't want the regressive left to go away. He wants them to dominate the entire left. Trump knows that every time a politician says something to appease woke Twitter, every time there's an Antifa protest, every time we see another instance of the regressive left ideology worming its way into the mainstream, every time this happens, it only helps Trump. He's seen the same polls.
But of course, it doesn't just help Trump; it helps the Republicans. So Trump talked about in that tweet how it hurts the Democrats, and that's true. It hurts the Democrats. It doesn't just hurt, the moderate Democrats. It hurts all the Democrats. It doesn't just help Trump; it helps the Republicans, and that's Trump's job. Fundamentally, his job is to be the representative of this political faction embodied by the Republican Party. He's the head of the Republican Party, and was the nominee of the Republican Party. He leads the Republican Party, and his job is to serve his constituency, and he's doing that very well.
That say that most people view political correctness as out of control. He knows it helped him win his first election. He knows that the more vicious, the louder, and the more powerful the regressive left becomes, the more it helps his own chances of winning the presidency again. This is the real 4D chess of the situation. Trump.
But what does maintaining power mean in this case? Maintaining power means losing the election and losing another Supreme Court seat. I mean, that's a massive loss for the left overall, including the regressive left. Or what he calls the regressive left, which I suppose is really the shrill elements of the left. And, the shrill and the polite elements of the left both lose when Trump wins in 2020.
Will do everything in his power to strengthen the woke regressive left, because
Trump will do anything in his power to weaken his political opponents embodied by the Democratic Party.
It helps his own purposes. Trump is a candidate who wins as a reaction to an enemy. It fuels the culture war that gives Trump his own power.
But this is how politics has worked for a while. You can look at how Bush was responded to, how Obama was responded to, and how Trump is responded to. There isn't this. This isn't new. Trump is just a much more inflammatory version well, actually, I wouldn't even say a much more inflammatory version of the same thing, because the other presidents also did inflammatory things. Principally, Bush, I think, was far more inflammatory overall than Trump is. That's one of the unusual things, is that you see people looking back at Bush with these rose-colored glasses. But I mean, the Iraq War was a big deal. It was a really big deal, and there was a lot of really extreme rhetoric over that war. It wasn't the case that Trump represents this extreme deviation towards disaster. Even just in terms of political polarization, by various metrics, it's increasing. Probably would increase with or without Trump. But when there's a war, just these metrics matter more. The Vietnam War made polarization matter way more than it would have mattered without the Vietnam War. The Iraq War, the Iraq War made polarization matter more than it would have mattered without the Iraq War. So starting these wars really, really matters.
So if it ever looks like things are moving in a positive direction, if it ever looks like the left is making progress on throwing out the SJWs, Trump will do everything in his power to sabotage it. Because Trump doesn't care about Democrats or Republicans, left or right. Trump isn't a tribalist. He's a Trumpist. He only cares about winning again. Trump will fuel the fires of the regressive left for his own gain. And he doesn't care.
Right, but how does this not help Republicans for the left to kind of devolve into this madness? That's the question. So if you can't give a reason why this doesn't hurt the Democrats, or why this should be good for the Democrats, that they're the victim of this wave of kind of extreme and very unphotogenic radicals, then your narrative falls apart in terms of criticizing Trump for being more self-serving than a typical politician representing his party.
If by doing so, he creates some woke Frankenstein's monster that will be powerful enough to win the presidency in 2024.
Why will this woke monster be better at winning 2024 than just the vanilla Democrats would have been without the woke monster? That's the question. And I don't think he has an answer.
When he's gone. Now, if you have trouble believing my reading of Trump's intentions while making this video, 2 other people came out with the same conclusion. Ezra Klein, a guy who, if you listen to me and Adam's live streams on my second channel, you know I really don't like. And David Axelrod, who was Obama's chief strategist. He said, with his deliberate, racist outburst, Donald Trump wants to raise the profile of his targets, drive Dems to defend them, and make them emblematic of the entire party. It's a cold, hard strategy. And even Scott Adams, or the Trump Whisperer, agreed with this. And if you're still not convinced that raising up AOC and the rest of the regressive left isn't Trump's plan, well, he actually bragged about it openly. The Dems were trying to distance themselves from the 4 progressives, but now they are forced to embrace them. That means they are endorsing socialism, hate of Israel and the USA. Not good for the Democrats. Now, if you think this is some kind of
Yeah, but all 3 of those references don't... Well, they support the notion that this is strategic by Trump, but not the notion that this strategic move by Trump hurts the Republicans and hurts the Republicans, essentially. If it doesn't hurt the Republicans, then it doesn't make sense to advance the hypothesis that this is an antagonistic Trumpist move that destroys the country. If it doesn't hurt the Republicans, then it's actually politics as usual. It's not Trump taking over politics for his personal gain. Now, I think that Trump is an opportunist, and that support for various gun control measures and for various kind of quasi-lefty policies illustrates his kind of opportunism. But this is not an illustration of that, because this goes along party lines, and this is just him being essentially a good steward of Republican interests.
Defense of the squad, you're sorely mistaken, as I don't like any of them. These congresswomen who wouldn't even condemn a terrorist attack.
Antifa firebombed a facility in Tacoma over the weekend. It's an ICE facility. Will you condemn them for that? Will you condemn Antifa for the attack in Washington?
We'll be making statements.
It's easy to condemn a terrorist attack. Do you condemn Antifa for their violent actions against American law enforcement?
No, you see, me not liking them is the whole point. I want to see them gone.
This reminds me of the Israeli political situation, where you have rival groups of anti-Zionists, where some are openly espouse or will not condemn violence, whereas others will condemn violence and will openly espouse democratic values, but will still push for anti-Zionist parties to win. And of the two, the more dangerous are the ones who will lie, who will say that they oppose violence, but actually cheer when suicide bombers kill people. And so a shift towards honesty, a shift towards clarity, is good for politics, because it allows the bad actors to be seen. What Trump is doing is he's forcing these moderate Democrats to show their hand. He's not changing their position. That's the crucial point. He's not changing their position, he's changing their appearance. Before Trump made this move, they still would have sided with these with the squad, but Trump forced them to reveal where their loyalties lie. That's clarity, and clarity in politics is very useful.
I don't want to see their ideology and their behavior be adapted by the rest of the Democratic Party.
But the fact that the Democratic Party sided with him indicates that their ideologies are the same, or the Democratic Party would simply disavow them. Right? Has the Democratic Party disavowed their ideology? No, the Democrats have disavowed the squad's tactics, not the squad's ideology.
So be aware when you cheer on Trump triggering the libs. Be aware of what you're actually cheering for. Sure, a hit of cocaine makes you feel good at the time, but in the long run, it only destroys you from the inside.
Well, what destroys you from the inside is not realizing where people's loyalties lie. Clarity, as I said, is a very valuable commodity in politics, and forcing people to reveal where their alliances lie is not the equivalent of cocaine, but the equivalent of healthy meals, exercise, and a good amount of sleep. All right, let's turn to the chat now. Levi says, any thoughts on red flag laws? There are already red flag laws in several states. I wouldn't want a national red flag law. I also don't think that it amounts to a conspiracy to take away everyone's guns. If people were to use it in that way, a way that it's not intended to be used, sure. But lots of things can be used in ways that are not intended to be used, including the military, the intelligence services, etc. Red flag laws don't really rank high on my list of concerns. That being said, I would oppose the passage of national red flag laws. All right, and I'm going to keep on going, but I'm going to be reviewing a second video, which is by Alternative Hypothesis. I think I'm going to pause the stream for a moment. Let's see. So it's around 5. So I'm going to cut the stream, and I'll later on, maybe tomorrow, be streaming about Alternative Hypothesis' second to last video, which is on Vosh, and as you can see, it's 3 hours long. He delves into a lot of interesting subjects, and I think that'll be fun. So, good day, folks. You'll see me on Luke Ford in a couple of hours. See you then.